All right. Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can all hear me. See in the chat, maybe. Lots of thumbs up. Great. My name is Michael Mativa. I am the vice chair of SORA. I think we're just going to give people a little bit more time to keep filtering in. So yeah, to kick us off, I guess, this is the SORA Winter Webinar. Thank you all for coming. We're going to have our Power BI showcase kicking off in just a minute here. But did want to make an announcement at the top that we are seeking volunteers for SORA's executive committee. It is, good professional development. You get to be on the website, which is great. You can, help plan events like this one. Network, share experience, all that good stuff. The positions on our executive committee are the chair, the vice chair, which is me, secretary. We have a communications coordinator, a volunteer coordinator, a workforce development coordinator, and then a web coordinator. So if any of that sounds remotely of interest to you, please, you can shoot me an email. The most recent SORA email had a survey in it. You can indicate your interest there. I'll be sending out that survey 1 or 2 more times before the end of the year. And yeah, it's only an hour a month. It is not a huge commitment, but we need people to help keep this type of thing running, put on these kinds of events, and help everybody have the kind of professional development and networking opportunities that they want to have through SORA. So yeah, like I said, shoot me an email or just respond to that survey. Either way should be great. And yeah, it looks like we're still getting a good amount of people filtering in, but we are 3 minutes past the hour, so I think we'll get it started. So I will stop sharing and turn it over to my fellow DOR colleague, Roman. Roman, are you able to share and get on and everything?
Oh, yes, great. I'm here.
Wonderful. All right. Well, yeah, we'll start off with the sort of Power BI primer. Just a general explanation kind of and walkthrough, I guess, of Power BI for people who may not have as much experience. So thank you, Roman, for giving the primer, and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Thanks for inviting me. This is my first time in this group. Now, when Michael asked me to do a primer on the Power BI kind of basics, I was thinking like, how should I structure it? So basically, we're not going to see a single Power BI element really in this presentation or dashboard or anything like that. But I'm going to be talking about things that I wish someone told me back in 2017 when I started working with Power BI as basically the only person in my agency. Back then, it was the Department of Education who was doing the Power BI. I started working on the Power BI, and I don't really have any formal training in the data analytics or education. I have master's in public administration. We did some courses on statistics, obviously, but not really in the depth that I thought it would be needed later. So I worked for the Department of Education for about 13 years and really worked on many different programs and positions, and ended up in the data analytics. And like it came out of frustration that the agency really didn't have a way for us to use our data that we had and in a way that would be meaningful to us and make decisions from it. So it started with pivot tables and kind of transitioned from that to the Power BI that turned out we already had as part of our Microsoft package. So that was a low-hanging fruit right there. And in 2017, I started taking some early courses and looking online how to work in Power BI. So that later led to a a first experience where basically Power BI kind of helped us survive through the pandemic. So in 2020, when the pandemic hit, our agency was faced with the necessity to start giving out grants to early childhood education systems and organizations, and we weren't really, as an agency, equipped to give out grants in such volume and to thousands and thousands of applications and take thousands of applications and process them. So it was a need where we had to build something really fast. We didn't have any time for the traditional IT development. And what I'm going to share with you is not how you would typically use Power BI. But I just want to kind of expand your understanding that it could be going beyond a lot. Like, this is really putting power into Power BI, if you want to say that way, and take it a lot further than just a tool for interpreting your data and doing dashboards and reports and so on. So what we had, one second, I'll switch to here. So what we had is emergency grant system, need for emergency grant system, and we didn't really have, like I said, the application to work with. So we started with existing systems. We had no time to purchase any systems. We started with SurveyMonkey Apply, which was a platform where we would take an application portal and we would have smart sheets for case management, vendor management, and payment management. Those of you who know smart sheets would understand what that is, but basically it's like a Excel type of thing, which you could use for tracking and data intake, and also design some workflows. And then we also had the DocuSigns. Those three on the left platforms that you see here were external systems that we had access to. The only one that we purchased really was the DocuSign. Everything else we already had. And then all of that was tied up to the Power BI, and the Power BI was a brain essentially of the entire operation, where all the information, all the data from the SurveyMonkey, from the Smartsheet DocuSign was flowing into the Power BI, and we designed a way there to look at the applications in a way that allows us to verify eligibility for people in organizations who are applying for the grants. Obviously, to verify that information, we needed access to the databases, the licensing on the right side. You see ODHS, Department of Education, Secretary of the State, verifying business, if it's actually business that exists. A federal SAM database, which allows us to look at the organizations that are banned from receiving federal funds, as well as state financial management system, where we can see if there's some vendors that we're not really supposed to give money to anymore, and things like that. And also we use the state financial management system to process the payments. So all that information was flowing into the Power BI and allowing us to do starting to develop the grant formula, really. And the way to do that, we needed to look at the total population that we're serving, to kind of design the equitable way to develop the amount of money that each organization should be receiving. So this was really helpful to have the access to those databases that we either open source or like ODHS, for example, would be sharing with us through the FTP server. And Power BI is flexible enough where it can take the data in any different way, in any different format. So that was really helpful. Now, all of that data obviously had to be connected properly, formatted properly, and we had to build a way to verify the eligibility for each applicant. And remarkably, we had a very low error rate. I mean, it's less than 1%, because of the robust data that we had coming into the system, where we could verify the eligibility, calculate the award, prepare agreements, send them to the DocuSign. So data was transferring daily, many times per day, actually, between all of these systems, allowing us to essentially build a grant management software without actually having one. So just think of it as disjointed platforms that we were able to, and data sources that we were able to combine into one grant system that was working with the help of Power BI. The summarize this kind of the results of the system is that we had 7 different grant phases that were running between throughout the entire pandemic time. And we had about 12,000 grants issued, $320 million in awarded funds, 5,000 organizations and businesses. Now, and the remarkable part about it is it was just only had 5 grant program staff, with only one person, me, myself, being as a full-time FTE, and 4 additional staff who were part-time working for this program. We had 0, I repeat, 0 IT hours or IT staff developing this system. And the entire time to have the system up and running would take only 2 weeks in development cycle. That largely is because we had no time during pandemic to do this. So traditionally you would maybe spend 4 weeks or so, but my point is that the people like me who don't have necessarily IT training can stand up a system, a full-blown IT system that allows you to process grants absolutely paperlessly, absolutely every cycle of the grant. So from application to the very end of making a payment and transaction through the state financial management systems. So that is, to me, the real power of the Power BI here, and just to demonstrate what can be possible. There was a question. I'm not monitoring chats. If you had a question, go ahead.
I'll monitor chat and let you know if there are any questions.
Thank you. All right, but so again, going back to the normal and traditional use of Power BI, things that I wish somebody told me back in 2017, so I wouldn't spend too much time. Let's go to that. Number 1, I would say it, if you're starting with Power BI, please consider switching your entire Microsoft Office to the 64-bit system. You will be able to find what system you're using right now, 32 or 64-bit. If you just go into the, like, for example, open Microsoft Excel or whatever other Office application and just look at about. Power BI will crash on 32-bit platform without backup. You will lose significant amount of time that you worked on creating something, especially if it's not automatically backed up. And it will have definitely very slow performance. So you have to, it's not it's not something that's difficult. Most state computers will have actually a 32-bit Microsoft Office platform right now. So you can contact your IT and ask them to convert. Now, conversion is really easy. You have to obviously consider any legacy systems that you might need to have access to. Like in the Department of Education, we have a number of legacies. Where I used to work, we had number of legacy systems that you just had to have 32-bit system, and you couldn't really install the 64-bit. But if you have that ability, please consider so. It will provide you with improved functionality, and hopefully not, like, after I installed 64-bit, it never crashed on me again. But with the 32, it was crashing several times a day, which was really frustrating. The other thing is start with the Power BI template. Design your own template. It will definitely save you a lot of time down the road. There are a number of things that your template is going to need. Obviously, use the agency theme and colors. And I know it's to the group here who work with data and data analysts and so on. It sounds really ridiculous, but you would not believe me how much time the dashboard will be presented. And the very first thing the managers will be focusing on is that I'm using the wrong colors. And I never could get the colors right. This is just frustrating. I'm having a PTSD now because of the colors. I'm never sure about my colors. So use the agency color themes. That way, you know, all questions kind of could be brushed aside. But you know, I would be like, hey guys, look at this data. Look at the insight. You know, look at what we can now learn thanks to Power BI, and look at this dashboard, how we can interact. And everybody would be like, no, we can't do this, Ramon. You know, your colors are not right. It's like, okay, all right. So what to include in a template? Definitely start with in each template, just as it's a must. I don't know why Power BI still hasn't done it where the date table is built in already. But you're gonna have to have a custom date table. Why it's custom? Because you in Oregon, in Oregon we have our own holidays, for example, right? So your date table would kind of account for those holidays throughout the year. You will definitely save time down the road when you're going to be, let's say you have a data set, with lots of data. There's going to be a date column, obviously, right? And then you need to present maybe or create a visual where you need to break it down by work week days. And so that date table is what you're going to be using to get down to that particular visual was the work week. Very helpful. Or if you're doing a calculation of figuring out how many staff you need in the unit in the future and forecasting that, being able to figure out what work days are in the year and things like that is going to be incredibly helpful. So please research, Google date table, Power BI. You will find some example. It's a good way to start. And then you just always include it in your theme.
We've got a couple questions, Roman, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So one, have you found a way to update the theme of all your published Power BI solutions? For example, if your color scheme changes?
No, I didn't try that. No, I never tried that before. I just used the theme, for one of my basically my custom template, and that's all I've been using. I haven't tried to apply a change to that. Don't know how it will work.
And then would you be okay if we posted these slides so people could review them later?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll share it with you.
All right, great. Yeah, we'll post these up on the SORA website, oregonresearch.org, and send out a follow-up email to everybody. Yeah, so you can check those out at your leisure. So thank you, Ramon.
I know. Again, I'll say it sounds really silly, but I've switched to a different agency. I'm with the Department of Revenue now, right? And it's the same thing. It's about colors. It's just a ridiculous thing. People need to have their right colors. So yeah, please use the theme. The other thing to include in your template is like any kind of reference to list tables that you might be using. So a good example would be Oregon US zip codes, counties, geocodes that you could potentially later use, even if you're not using it in this particular whatever dashboard project that you're working on. Just having it will, I guarantee you, will come out later. We're going to need to show data in a different way. The management is going to want to see in a different way. So having those already built in, so you don't have to add them later, is always helpful. And just things that don't really change very often, like the name of your offices, the name of your units, whatever kind of constant statistics that will stay there. You can just keep them in as a table that would be always in your template. DAX measures. I mean, at some point you will get to the point where you're going to create DAX measures that are going to be very, very specific. You're going to be very proud of them because they're going to be very complicated. They'll be the kind of the gem, right? That you could potentially sell it if there was a market for them, because how complicated and how much time you spend researching them and how helpful they are. So those DAX measures you will be reusing, and it would save you a tremendous amount of time if you just save that DAX measure and explain what is happening in that measure. So provide detailed description of every step that's happening in that DAX measure. For those of you who don't know what DAX measure is, or DAX is the RBA language for creating complicated calculations and formulas in addition to, it's sort of like Excel formula, but it's for Power BI and as a language that it has its own basically way of describing what then needs to happen with the data. And any calculation examples that you will be reusing later. Now, Power Query is any custom functions that you will be doing with preparing your data. But that's the first step. Data never comes clean, right? You always have to do something. It's not properly formatted. It's a date, but it's not formatted as a date, and you will be needing to kind of create that maybe a list of 50 steps before you can actually do anything with that data. So those custom functions in reusable transformation steps is really helpful to have kind of preserved and maybe save it on the, I call them auxiliary pages of my Power BI, where basically we'll have just the description of what I was doing in this particular transformation step and what I was trying to achieve there. So that way you can always come back and reuse it. Obviously, information about custom connectors to the outside databases and data sets. I mean, even though Power BI and SharePoint, for example, is the same family of products, it is remarkable that you can't just copy and paste a SharePoint address into the Power BI and connect to the data that's on SharePoint. That's not how it works. You're going to have to figure out a way to connect to the SharePoint list or whatever. And so information about how you do this is going to be stored in that, in your template too. So that's something that you'll be definitely using in the future. Data model. Now, definitely think through the design of your data model before creating PBI file. Now, just take a paper and do it on the paper. I find it very useful because you will be down the road tapping yourself on the shoulder for doing this extra leg and thinking through. You will be accessing the same data sets, maybe from different dashboards. And if you think through ahead of time how this is going to look, if you identify those data sets that can be reused, and you place them strategically so you could access them and minimize the amount of time you move data around and minimize the time or the load of the data, that would be ideal. So a good example would be if something, like let's say most of us, we get a Excel file, right? Or we have someone handing us an Excel file with a lot of data. Now, if that happens and if that Excel file gets updated, maybe we should think of placing that Excel file online. So it's not exchanged via email. So someone, can update it on the SharePoint, and then you tap with the Power BI into the SharePoint location where that file is created, or to a folder where many files will be added. And as long as they're consistent, you can apply your model, and it will Power Query model, and it will just run through and apply the same steps to all of those files. So be very strategic in how, before you even start doing the creating Power BI file, what happens with your data and what will be happening as you go. I can't even stress enough how much you need to spend time in learning what Power Automate can do with Power BI. So Power Automate is an intrinsic part of the Microsoft family of products. So it works really well with Power BI. Those of you who did not look at it, click on the waffles of your Microsoft Office 365 and look at what Power Automate can do. Please research that. and see if you can automate your data flow, if you can create any updates or incremental refreshes. I've used Power Automate extensively, especially when there's something you have to do manually, and Power Automate can take care of that automatically. That try not to become the slave of the process, right? So try to see if you can automate something and not be there every day to what I call the wheelbarrow data from one place to another. If Power Automate can do it, let it do it. And the Power Automate can be configured with not just internal Microsoft systems. Say, like, for example, for us, Power Automate was taking care of the data. Well, let's say it's a SurveyMonkey, taking data from the SurveyMonkey, bringing it to the SharePoint, and then scheduling a further flow where Power BI will grab it from SharePoint and put it into the process. You can also have a dashboard, for example, where your managers are looking at the dashboard, they see something of their interest. You can design a button that they click and it triggers the workflow where information from that dashboard is emailed to them or to mail to somebody else, or some kind of other action is happening. So it's really powerful. Data input. So again, we have already available to us a number of solutions from Microsoft. Most of you work for the state, so there's a number of solutions available, like Microsoft Lists, Microsoft Forms. Those are low-hanging solutions that we have right there in front of us. And if we have any data inputs happening, then make it happen in Microsoft List. It works amazingly well with the Power BI. You can share it internally. It's secure if it's an internal data entry. If it's external, then look into solutions like Smartsheets, JotForms, and so on. There are many of them that are, but make sure that those solutions are working with Power BI, that there's either API or OData connection. There's a number of different ways to connect it to the Power BI. And maybe sometimes it's not direct connection with Power BI, but you can first get it into the SharePoint, and then from SharePoint with the Power Automate, you can design a way to get that data further into Power BI. The star schema model. So that you probably all know that this is the preferred way to design your models, where you have the dimensions tables and the fact tables, and how you organize them is really important for the as your Power BI gets more complicated, your simple star schema will actually help you get the results out of it. Also pay attention to the appropriate relationships between each table. So it's really easy when you start adding new data. Power BI is going to be very helpful by creating automatically relationship if it finds and it identifies these relationships, but occasionally it will not do the relationship in the correct way. So sometimes it could be bidirectional, or in the wrong direction, the connection will be made, or to a wrong element in the database or data set. So that's something to pay attention to. It will do a lot of things automatically, but pay attention to what it's doing, because sometimes it's incorrect. Power BI setup. So with loading data, what I've learned is when I've started doing is that you kind of have everything added, and every time you refresh, everything is refreshes. Great, but you really don't need to refresh everything. And as you add really complicated or large data sets, it will take on your resources. So load only what is necessary. So we can make sure that if the table has a doesn't have factual information that keeps updating, you might only need it to load it once, and then you just disable it and it's not going to be refreshed. So yeah, with Power Query is a good way to actually control the amount of data. So, if it's coming with 200 columns, do you really need all 200 columns? The best way to preserve your resources as far as the memory resources of the Power BI is to control out the very gate how much data you letting in. I mean, you can always expand it later if you need to, but just think through, do you really need all 200 columns of that? Utilize reference feature to copy a table. So if there's a table and you know, table with facts and you need to do something with it, fine. Then you figure out at some point that you need to do something else with it. Maybe you want to merge it with a different data set and slice and dice it completely differently, right? So you're like, okay, I need to create a copy of that table. So very frequently I found that people would do a duplicate. Now, it's easy, and duplicate is you just right click and say, hey, create a duplicate from this table. And it does that for you, but it adds the resource. It's like it starts clogging the memory of the Power BI. So instead of that, try to utilize the reference feature. So you will create a reference to the table, and you can still do a lot of things with the reference table, but it is taking it's a lot lighter on your overall resource utilization. So if you've never heard of the reference versus duplicate, just research online what Power BI reference table versus duplicate, what it means, what kind of impact it will do on, because sometimes you might actually need a duplicate instead of reference. But most of the time I found the reference feature works in most of my cases that I needed. Now, if you are doing a dashboard, finally you understand everything, you created your first dashboard, please take some time and create the last refresh date stamp on your dashboard pages. It really helps people to understand, and yourself too, what is refreshed and when. And that, especially if some of your data sets are not refreshed at the same time, it would be helpful to understand which visuals are refreshed when. And it's really easy to do if you have a date table. Custom reset button. I found it really useful, and I'm so still surprised that the Microsoft Power BI does not come with that button already created for you and built in as a feature. So you're gonna have to create it custom way. And what it does, it kind of resets all your visuals and filters to initial state. And it's not only for, like, even if you don't have a published Power BI dashboard, even for yourself, it's helpful sometimes to just hit the reset, because you know, if you're a user and you go into the dashboard and it has a lot of different filters and you start interacting with them, you activate this filter, that filter, click here and there, you know, everything corresponds on your page to those filters, right? And at some point you just forget what you activated. And instead of trying to trace your step back, I found that just the reset button will work really well, and people really like that in our group. And you would use the bookmark function with the action on click to do that. And I would generally advise to use against using multiple filters on the dashboard, or at least if you do have to use them, please think through of using like syncing and unsyncing feature for filters. So there is a way to unsync so that not everything corresponds to a particular filter. It really very often that not everything needs to be synchronized really. And last, I just want to share with you, and I'm going to be sharing this file, but I'm going to share these resources. So there's a lot of links. This is the kind of things that was helpful to me when I was starting. Well, very first, I think what's happening right now, and what we need to pay attention to, is the kind of the next Power BI evolution, and that's Microsoft Fabric. So just go and learn what is happening there, what's Microsoft doing, and then the kind of the list of different training resources. Most of them are going to be free, that you can start learning. I find a lot of things that SQL BI, the Italian guys are doing. There are a lot of things, a lot of tools they developed that are free to use, and will help you with your use of Power BI. And one of the YouTube resources, obviously there's a ton of them, but one of them that I really, really like and would highly recommend is a curveball. Is a really good way how she found a way to explain Power BI to us. And if you are stuck with some DAX function that you can't figure out, I would definitely recommend her. Yeah, somebody in the chat is saying that it's one of their favorite too. Well, that's all I have. Go create. If there are any questions, I'll happy to answer.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got, I don't see any questions in the chat, and we're a little bit over time, but if anybody has a quick question for Roman, we can get that knocked out before moving on to kind of the show and tell portion of the webinar.
There's a hand raised.
Oh, is there? Let's see. I should be able to allow you to put your mic on if your hand is raised. Oh, hand went down. Will the links be active on the SORA website? Should be. I can compile some of those resources separately as well and send that out in like just a broad SORA email as well, just to make sure that everyone can get it. Oh, one question. How did you get permission to connect everything without IT involvement?
I think partially, and I can go back to the page where we had those connections kind of listed. So partially, this was because of the way Department of Education had their IT set up, where we kind of actually had a lot of access to a lot of things. And you know, I work with the licensing office for a long time, so we had a good relationship with ODHS, where we asked them, for example, to get our the FTP access to their data set. It's not really IT that we had to get permissions from. It's really was their security, their managers, and things like that. Our licensing data came from our internal systems at the Department of Education. SOS has, if you haven't looked at them, State of Secretary, they have open source data access. So if you are going to be looking at the SOS, I highly recommend. There's a lot of data that you might find useful. And don't think a little beyond of exporting table in Excel from there and using it. There is actually a way, and they provide you with the way to hook up the data sets that are on State Secretary of the State website directly to the Power BI. So that way you establish this connection, you hit refresh, and I mean, pay attention to some of the tables. Like, for example, we were tapping into the active businesses in the state of Oregon. So that database is almost like 800 megabytes. So it will take 10 minutes for you to refresh it, or maybe you can schedule an incremental refresh and things like that. And so that is a great resource. Now, federal SAM database is the same thing. You just create an account, get in. State Financial Management System probably is where we had the most kind of barrier to get access to. We actually did ask IT to give us access to the State Financial Management System and hook it up with Power BI. It took a tremendous amount of time, and by the time they helped us with this, we actually no longer needed it. So what we ended up doing is creating exports from State Financial Management System and loading data to their outside without IT. So believe it or not, but yes, there was no IT involved, and a lot of things you can do on your own. Be careful.
All right. Well, I see we have one more question. Unfortunately, we're pretty far over time. So I would recommend, if you do have more questions for Roman, he's very responsive and great help a lot of the time. So if you just shoot him an email, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer some questions. But yeah, thank you, Roman. Really appreciate you taking us through this.
Welcome.
All right. So for the last 20 minutes, we're going to do a little bit of a show and tell. So I think after kind of the broad overview, we might it might serve us best to move directly into more of an example. So we have Chris Wytoski from DOR. If you can share your screen and all that, there we go. Yeah. Chris is Chris is in charge, I believe, of the mail processing center at DOR. So yeah, take it away. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And I think I should start with this. I am self-taught, so my dashboards aren't particularly advanced, but I have 3 that I've built and used in a variety of different ways. And this first one I'm going to share with you, I was trying to create some really easy to read visuals and analyzing 3 different types of equipment that we were using in our mailroom and figuring out which were most effective for opening different types of mail. And so I imported a variety of what are kind of like, we call them trays of mail, but transactions related to trays of mail and how long it took folks to open particular types of work. And we have about 10 to a dozen different types of jobs that you'll see here. We have different names that mean something to us. And then that data also included what piece of equipment they were working on and whether it was just kind of a basic desk, whether it was we had purchased some new desks that had some tracking equipment involved with them, and then we have some high-speed automated mail opening and extraction desks as well. And so those are kind of the 3 different pieces of equipment. And I wanted to be able to see, was it more efficient to use one particular piece of equipment for a type of work compared to others? And so I built this dashboard where I could see a variety of different information based on throughput, overall throughput, as well as a percentage to like a mail opening standard that we had set, and then be able to compare and visualize that against each other. And Michael, please help me. I don't know how in depth you want me to go, but I figured I'd just kind of scratch the surface on what I've used this for. But I created a handful of different pages that help me see some comparisons. And so I could see by mail type where we were more efficient. And so in this case, using what's called an all-size extraction desk, we were more efficient in using that equipment in most cases, except for what we call miscellaneous correspondence. And then it's sometimes what we call our coupon money work, where our high-speed extraction desks were the most efficient. And can even see where on many of these, perhaps my standards were set too high, where we weren't able to meet standard in some cases. And so it really helped us kind of hone in on what kind of equipment our staff should be using to perform the different kinds of work in our area. And Mike, I'm more than willing to show one other one. I don't know how much time I have.
Yeah. I would say until 11:50 or so. So 5,
Okay.
6 more minutes, and hopefully, if people have 1 or 2 questions, can address those at the end. But yeah, I think
Excellent.
showing another example would be great.
Okay, and the other, let me see if I can hold on while I switch screens, I'm sorry, is a dashboard that I give to the agency. It's not particularly complicated, but what this dashboard does is it provides information on where the processing center is in its work in a variety of different steps and units. And so you can see where we are in mail opening, where we are in return processing, payment processing, imaging. We have a review team, and then we have a unit that does what we call kind of suspense related work. And then overall, the agency can then see how long on average it's taking us to process a tax return, which is what they're probably most interested in, for the most current week, as well as the year to date. And so this is something that I have posted on our intranet that all staff in the agency can access. They can manipulate the week ending date that they wish to look at, so they can kind of go back in time, or they can go to the current week. And of course, the dashboard updates all of that information for them. If we have backlog in a particular unit, they can see what type of work that is, mostly by what we call tax program. So, in this case, in tax returns back at the week ending November 17th, all of our backlog was in the fiduciary estate tax return area. And so, and then the other most important thing that the agency really likes to see is what working date we're working on, so they know when they're helping taxpayers or our customers how up to date we are, as far as what's been mailed in. And I also designed for this particular dashboard a mobile layout. See if it'll switch. That same information. So anybody in the agency that has a state issued mobile device with Power BI installed, they can favorite this and see it right on their phone without logging in to our network as they're kind of starting up for the day. And I found this really helpful. I know I take a look at it, and then this particular one I have in Power BI online. It's on a scheduled refresh, so my managers are required to make sure they have all of their stats in by 9 a.m. Monday morning, and then that's when this dashboard refreshes so that anybody who visits our intranet page can see that information fresh every Monday. And then the last thing I'll mention is I have one other dashboard that we're using very regularly, and that's to provide some performance statistics for staff. I'm not going to share that one because it does have a little bit of data that's kind of verging on confidential, but it gives our employees a weekly, monthly, and quarterly look at in the mailroom of what they're opening, how they are performing to our standards, what kind of equipment they're using. And so they get a very detailed look at how much work they're doing and how well they're doing to their expectations. And that one we are also making available on our intranet, but it's been a little tough working with IT and locking it down so that you can only see your own stats or everybody's stats compiled, and you're not looking at your neighbor's stats or colleagues' stats. But what we found, unfortunately, is that we've really had to build a separate dashboard for each person. But then we can link it to the same data source, so at least we're only updating a single data source. That was what I was going to share. I guess if there's any questions.
Yeah, a couple questions. One, hopefully a quick one. Do you know if you can see, if there's a place you can see the number of views on any given dashboard?
I know I can see on our intranet page how many views we get just through some of the settings on SharePoint. I have not figured out a way to look at that in Power BI myself. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything like that either. I think like page views, yeah, would be the best way to get something like that. Have you considered sharing dashboards through Teams directly rather than doing it on the SharePoint? Or doing it, I guess, on like the intranet rather?
I haven't done that. So in our agency, we have to request to create a team. And so it was a lot easier for me to just post something through SharePoint because we have a lot easier access there. I know Ramon had kind of shared that some things you kind of have a lot of access to and some things you don't. So for me anyway, it was actually a little bit easier to do that rather than doing it through a Teams channel or team.
And I see a couple people asking about sort of a Power BI user group. I don't think there's an enterprise-wide one. At least if there is, I have not heard of it. I don't know about you, Chris. But it has been something actually that the SORA executive committee has been discussing, is creating user groups for specific software, probably housed within like a team, since I think Teams is pretty standard across Oregon state government at this point. So glad to see that there's interest in that. If you have more, if that's something that people want, that is definitely something that we're interested in setting up. I don't think there's a way to set up permission levels in Power BI, just to answer a quick question. or like different permissions. You'd have to make separate dashboards, I think, and then put them in different places. But yeah, so thank you, Chris. Appreciate you showing us a few of your dashboards and lending your expertise. We'll wrap up here the last about 9-10 minutes with Luke from DCBS. They were talking in the chat earlier when the template discussion was going on. So yeah, we'll hear about templates from Luke. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm just gonna do a quick screen share, make sure I pick the right screen. So I'm just gonna run really quickly through templates, starting with the basics. Just so you know, I don't have any production dashboards that don't have personally identifying information, so I can't share any of my big complicated financial dashboards as much as I would love to. So this is a dashboard that we designed for basically introducing the concept of Power BI to people who have no technical background whatsoever. Don't worry too much about the content of it, but it's essentially a demonstration of the various graphics and visualizations that you can make use of, graphs, bar charts, scatter plots, and other types of bars or other types of graphics. So I'm just going to start with the table because that's the simplest one. And because the default table template has these blue lines in these tables, which I think are a fun and easy thing to change around. So the first thing that I want to do is go over to view, and this is where you'll do most of your templating work here. As you can see, there's a couple different default templates that are available. I kind of like this one. It's a nice dark color. As you can see, we've got entirely different shades, but also potentially different fonts. I'm just gonna move that table right back. We've got some graphs. As you can see, the colors on the graphs will change unless maybe you haven't memorized the colors of these, but I can see that they've changed. And then, of course, we've got a couple options here in addition to the default ones. We can browse for themes. We can check out the theme gallery, which is sort of community-based, and then we can customize the current theme. So I'm going to start with the customize current theme. And we're just going to look at these default colors here. So one of the things that's really worth messing with is the sentiment colors. For example, I'm colorblind, and so are a lot of people. So having your negatives be red and your positives be green isn't super helpful because, for me anyway, they're the same. So I tend to go towards some highly visible colors. Right now, I'm just picking some arbitrarily for fun. Yellow and blue, unless you happen to be a trichromatic colorblind person, which is very rare. Those are generally distinguishable. There's a couple colorblindness tools that will help you pick good colors if you're designing a theme and you want some advice on that. But yeah, I can send those to you later on if you'd like. Feel free to message me. So names and colors are just the start, right? You can name your theme. You can mess with the various levels of your graphics. For example, these are the various levels within your tables. And then you can also mess around with the text, the titles, the card KPIs, the tab headers, and the visuals. Basically, anything that you can mess with in Power BI in this pane over here in the format has a selection that you can make as a default. For example, I want to say yeah, there we go. I'm going to do like visual effects. So like backgrounds, visual borders, drop shadows, and things like that. Yeah, no worries. There's definitely lots of colorblind folks. I would recommend Adobe Color has a tool that's definitely worth looking up. But yeah, I'm moving kind of quickly because I've got a lot to talk about and we are limited on time. But let's say you've customized your theme, you've messed with a lot of options, and let's say you call it a fun theme, and then we'll just apply that here. The first thing that you want to do is apply that theme to other dashboards. So you might go to Save Theme, which is in that same menu, and then you can save it as whatever you want, fun theme, and this will give you a JSON file. And this is kind of the start for basic templates. So now you've got that JSON file, which you can see in here. We've got our fun theme. Whenever you want to say, go to another dashboard, let's pretend we've opened up another dashboard, and for fun, we'll check out this page. Oh no, it's got this weird theme that we don't want. If we go to browse for themes, we can very easily find right there in the last folder that I've used, but you know where it'll be, your fun theme. And bam, we're back here to this fun theme that I designed. Wow, I really, I do not like this fun theme that we designed. So what I can show you is the fun theme for, oh, I don't have it in here. I know where it is though. I have we designed a theme for Power BI reports in, where did I put this? One moment while I think this out. Essentially, it's a, I think it's in our sandbox, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. It's in the sandbox. So it's a theme for our agency to use, which has been designed to be a little bit more colorblind friendly. It also has some nice features that work for the kinds of dashboards that we've been tending to design. As you can see, we've taken away a lot of the extra formatting and colors from the tables to give them more of a sleek, like more modern appearance. We tend to de-emphasize tables, and so we want to keep them small, and we want to focus more on the graphics, the graphs and such. And so this theme works for us to keep our tables a little bit more simple, as you can see here, and then isolate and highlight specific rows of data with conditional formatting. You can also see with our graphs over here, we've got a specific color scheme for good, neutral, and bad stuff. We've got good is, I picked blue because it tends to be a cooler, calmer color. And then oranges and yellows are more attention grabbing. Think like stoplights. So this way, these things stick out a little bit more. We don't tend to use the neutral color all that often. Sometimes we'll just use our agency's default color, which I think is going to be, yeah, that's going to be here. So I'll usually use this one for neutral stuff, but other times, you know, maybe you don't want to use your agency's like a branded color, and so you'll go with this. But this tends to be, this is our agency's default color. And then when I saved this as a JSON, I had my first template. So I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can find my right notes here. Here we go. So when you have your first template, that's the beginning, right? That's the introduction. And so just going to ignore all of this stuff here. When you customize your JSON theme, you get something kind of like this when you open it up. So I customized my fonts. I added some colors, and these are our sort of agency colors that we selected. And this is really great. So the JSON file essentially gives you the opportunity to just directly edit those color values outside of Power BI and then upload them. So I find that this is super helpful for customizing more advanced things. But what if you wanted to get really deep in and customize things like, for example, tables? Well, as you can see, there's a lot that you can customize, and there's a lot that we've customized. For example, with those pivot tables that I pointed out to you, as you can see, these options here all correspond to our pivot tables. And then I believe table X, these all correspond to the matrix. As you can see, there's a lot of options here. For example, we turned off certain rows. We've changed the default colors to a different shade of gray that I think made more sense. We've changed text size. Things like that, which produce a more cohesive theme. But how, you ask? How do you know how to write this code? I mean, I'll tell you, I personally don't know how to write JSON code, and I'm like the other presenter, entirely self-taught on this. Well, that's where we come to these 3 different resources that I want to share with you guys. So the first one is, and I'll share these in the chat momentarily. These are essentially the 3 sources that I use when I'm messing around with Power BI JSONs. The start is Microsoft's default, documentation for report themes. I happen to have these 3 links opened up here. And this goes into more detail than you could possibly want on how to do some of these things, but also less detail than you could possibly want on how to do some of these things. I'm just scrolling by here so you can see there's a lot of examples of how to do different stuff. They even show some color codes. So this is, much like the theme that I showed you. Essentially, writing this code here, though, needs a little bit more detail. And for me personally, I don't want to have to learn how to write this by hand. So that's where my second link comes in here. This is the JSON theme schemas. So this is from Microsoft's Power BI GitHub. And it's essentially a repository of the latest schema that is used to validate JSON files. And so we're getting a little bit more into the advanced section of the presentation. So if you're a little bit intimidated by this, don't worry. But the start is essentially they give you a guide for how to set up a Visual Studio, for example, is the one they use, a coding, what's the word? Yeah, no problem. I'm glad. Sorry you missed it out. They'll give you essentially a way to set up your IDE, your coding environment to validate a JSON file. So when you're editing these nice JSONs here, it'll tell you whether or not you've got it all set up. So that's the first resource, as I recommend following those instructions if you wanted to get really deep in the weeds. And then the second thing is this unofficial JSON template that someone has put together. This user essentially created a visualization guide. And as you can see, there's a key for every kind of visualization you might want. And this is useful because the default Power BI JSON, which I'll show you here, is literally, and I'm just going to go over the scroll by here, something like 41,000 rows of code. Now, no one's able to do all that. But if you really wanted to customize it, what you could do is just go into one of these pages here, say I want to work on the funnel graph, and I want the funnel graph to have a different color background. Well, there's the JSON code right there. And this has all been validated against the schema. And if you set up your environment with the instructions that they provide here, you can compare your schema to your example here and write the code that way. And then, you know to customize the color. Pretty simple to customize the title by customizing the title, going over here and changing the colors or the font sizes. So yeah, that gets you from editing with the GUI in Power BI to editing the the very specifics of everything from your title font size and color to your default colors to your bar width padding in between the two bars and everything in between. So it can get pretty advanced. You can customize this more than you ever even realized. But at the end of the day, once you've done all that customization, it's pretty simple to just apply it like that. And there you go. You've got your latest dashboard developed as you like, and then you can easily apply your theme to whatever dashboard you want. Earlier in the chat, a user asked if there was a good way to apply themes to multiple dashboards without having to go dashboard to dashboard and individually browse to theme, find the theme, and upload it. Unfortunately, I haven't found a quicker way to do that for multiple dashboards. There isn't like a batch processing that I've found, but yeah, that's the easiest way to do it that I found is to create that custom JSON and then go to each of your different dashboards in turn and upload your visual template. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I've got prepared. I hope it was helpful, and yeah, I think I shared the links in the chat, so feel free to browse those and save them somewhere, and let me know if you have any questions or yeah, anything else, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
Yeah, sorry I was so quick.
I personally learned a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't see any particular questions. But people should hopefully have access to this chat, and then I'll be compiling a bunch of the resources as well, just to put out. We'll probably put it on our website, and then I'll email it out as well to just like the SORA listserv. But great, yeah. Thanks everybody. Let's see. Just want to give one last shout out. We are still seeking volunteers for SORA's executive committee. If you liked this and want to help put on more events like this, we'd really appreciate your help. It is not scary. It's only an hour a month. So yeah, email me, answer the survey, do whatever you got to do. But I think that should take care of it.